Okay, so
Welcome to the show.
welcome. We're trying out a little something new today. So hopefully, hopefully this comes
Fingers
across
crossed.
okay. Yeah, um, I have had notoriously good luck with
Technology.
with technology and programs and everything else. And but anyway, so tonight, Betsy has been teasing me for a week about a surprise she's bringing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know much about it, but we're going to intersperse throughout it with news because
There's a lot this week.
this week has been a smorgasbord of news. It's
Strange.
well, and some of it bleeds over into 2 weeks ago because we had a guest. We don't really have the opportunity to go as deep into the news,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm kind of
We're living in an upside down world.
yes,
The the other world, so to speak.
yes, yes.
Just
Yeah.
when you think you've heard it all, Jared brings us the
Well,
latest of stuff you have not heard.
most of it's because, well, a lot of it. There is a YouTube page I tend to listen to. What's that?
She says we're good.
Okay, there's a YouTube channel I listen to called Dumpster Fire that I nabbed one of these off of, and their call on it was fantastic. I mean, literally fantastic. Listen to called Dumpster Fire. Okay, it was very good, and so I'm going to bring it here also, and then um, what else? Just little things that pop up in my everything, If I see something, I nab it. But anyway, so I figured we just kick it off with a little bit of a news story. Okay, so regardless of your feelings on the coronavirus and how it's been dealt with and everything else, we all know that Facebook and YouTube has made it clear that they do not want certain mentions. I mean, we might get kicked off of YouTube for me just saying that. Certain mentions on there about it.
There is a narrative.
Yes. And so if you say something that they deem on what they want, they come after you. So
Fact check you.
um
I've had
so
a few fact check that were just like funny memes,
yeah, yeah,
like just funny things.
yes. There was a someone dug into it. So it says Horowitz. And this was first come out of the Blaze, but we're reading it off Flipboard. They talk about how the the fact checkers, the independent fact checker, is funded by an organization that has ties to Johnson and Johnson.
Hmm.
So Johnson and Johnson funds an organization that then Facebook hires or allows to fact check information put out, and that, I don't know, will that cause a
Huge conflict of interest.
will that cause an opportunity for some
Well, think about it. If you were creating a vaccine for a pandemic and the narrative being tossed around was that it has a really high survival rate, you probably don't need a vaccine. The manufacturing end of vaccinations, the manufacturing end of any medical wares, or in this case, the vaccine, or it shouldn't even be called a vaccine, but whatever it is, it's very expensive. The front end to put these together, especially at the speed at which they were requested to do so, it's huge. So you have to understand that Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, Pfizer, all of these vaccine manufacturers are beholden to their shareholders. Just like they're a traded company, so they're beholden, so they have to turn a profit. So it does make, although a conflict of interest, it makes sense to dampen any narrative being floated around that could hinder that.
Yeah, it is crazy that. Well, here's the hard part. Oh, you know what? I don't have a problem with the fact checker being funded by the pharmaceutical company. I don't have an issue if the fact checker is going to openly, say whatever. What I have an issue with is when Facebook will use them as and won't allow other voices in there because we don't know where that could go. We don't know what could uprise next. And next thing you know, the only narrative allowed is X, Y, or Z when, a narrative that may, quite frankly, save a nation or save a life is cut out.
Yeah. The problem I have with fact checkers is they fact check opinions and not, official statements. I personally am not in a position of influence.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were, then I would expect that I would be held to that, to, whatever the official research narrative is.
Mm-hmm.
And people putting their opinion on there are being fact checked for their opinion. And that's just a egregious, blight against freedom of speech.
Yes.
So that's the only issue I have with it, is the way that they're using it to kind of poke, people's opinions and poke holes in people's opinions.
Yeah. Well, you know what? All right. So we're into this show about 8 minutes. Let's get on with the story. There's more news, but we'll feather them in. There's some news and opinion tonight. So hopefully it turns out good.
So I came across a couple of nursery rhymes that really surprised me, and it kind of led me down this rabbit hole, and it led me directly to Disney. So when you think of Disney, you think of, funny cartoons, movies, generally with happy endings, and theme parks. And Disney's worked very, very hard to give the image of, the happiest place on earth, and everything's, smiles and happy. But there's also this strange background, that doesn't necessarily pair well with this squeaky clean reputation that the company holds. There's kind of a dark side. And, they acquired this dark side, even before, Star Wars, Darth Vader, and all of that came along. But there's hidden, disturbing imagery and secrets in the Disney universe, that you normally think of, like singing pirates, fairy tale princesses, things like that.
Are you talking about like when they would remember when you used to get the VHS tapes, aging myself, and they had the cover, I think what was the one with the mermaid?
Yeah, Little Mermaid.
And
it had penises on it.
Yeah, a couple of the Palisades were
and that may
phalluses.
have just been, overlooked or whatever. But there are some other ones. So Pirates of the Caribbean is one. So the real skull and crossbones of Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, when you go to Disneyland, and if you go on the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, there are some props that are not actually props. They're real and once belonged to human beings.
Okay, what?
Yes.
Like what?
So,
Like swords?
no, skulls and bones.
Oh, they've got real skulls and bones
Yes. And
in the rides?
yes. And
Like
now,
like
as props.
haunting. Come on.
So, the way that the story goes, and I don't know if they, set out and said, no, make it as real as possible, put the actual skull and bones there.
Are you looking for a ghost? Are you?
But the way the story goes is that the Imagineers, that's the people that create the sets, they call them Imagineers, were unhappy with the existing props. So they decided to incorporate the real thing into the attraction. Now, it goes on to say that, as word of this got out, the Imagineers, moved on to other positions and things, and that a lot of the real bones and skulls were removed.
Imagine the guy who is building the... I've never been to Disneyland. Now I'm kind of glad. But imagine the guy building that. He's going to a Palomayambe priest and or priestess and saying, and then they're digging it. I
know. So the ride, I've been on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and you go through one particular scene, and it's a pirate's bedroom. So it's like all wood background, but there's a bed. And the skull and crossbones on the headboard above the dead pirate's head is real. So there's a dead pirate, but the skull and crossbones is real. It's a real skull. So that was one of the things I found.
Oh.
But then you kind of go down this rabbit hole of where did these movies originate? And the original versions of the stories that Disney has turned into children's movies are terrifying. They're terrifying. So let's start with Cinderella, for instance. So in Disney's version of Cinderella, it's about a princess who's mistreated by her stepmother and goes to the ball, meets a prince, but has to escape before midnight, remember, because her carriage is going to turn back into a pumpkin.
Uh-huh.
And as she's running down the steps, she loses a slipper. Then the prince takes the slipper and has young ladies in all of the kingdom try it on to see who it fits. He finds Cinderella. It fits her perfectly.
Uh-huh.
They live happily ever after.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Now,
no, we're good. We can cut it there.
The original story is a Charles Perrault story. Now, when the prince arrives at Cinderella's house, so it's a lot of the same storyline. So Cinderella's mother dies,
mm-hmm.
and her father remarries,
uh-huh.
and then he dies.
Uh-huh.
And then her evil stepmother makes her do all of the work in the house, and the prince is looking for a wife, and the story goes on pretty similar. There's no like pumpkin and things like that, but Cinderella goes to a ball and loses a slipper.
There's no mice that make a dress.
That make a dress. But when the prince arrives, so hearing that the prince is going from house to house looking for the person that this slipper fits, the stepmother, who is just succumbed with greed, really wants to be a part of the royal family and get all of the riches that come with it. She orders her 2 daughters to cut off their toes so that their feet will fit inside the slipper.
And they do?
They cut off their toes. One of them actually cuts off her heel because her foot was so elongated in the back that she just knew, trying on smaller shoes, that it wouldn't fit. So she saws off the heel of her foot. Now,
and then he's sliding it on this stump, this
toeless stump. So now her plan does not work, and Cinderella fits the slipper.
Uh-huh.
And during...
How big were they were the feet that they had to shave
they were
off
hideous.
toes and heel.
They were hideous, manly, hairy feet in the Charles Perrault version.
Speaking of manly,
So
the news story coming up next.
oh jeez, it's too much.
No, it's perfect. This is
So in the Charles Perrault story, the stepsisters are not as upset. They're just really not. And they attend the wedding, but pigeons come down smelling the rotting flesh on their feet and devour the eyes of the already mutilated stepsisters. And that's how it ends. So
did the
Disney,
stepsisters die?
It doesn't say. Just devoured their eyes.
Just came down and ate
their
eyes as they screamed and couldn't run away because
Yes. So Disney takes this movie or this story and turns it into something that's a little more palatable
Old Walt's
for children.
No, leave that part out.
Why would you even turn this into a children's movie?
Good heck. Oh, well, okay. Let's take a break from that funness. We have another story. So everyone well, this isn't a story. Everyone knows. Gavin Newsom, his recall, they've got
it's moving.
They've got the votes to recall him.
It's like a freight train.
And let's face it, he has screwed that state up. As many prosperous people and businesses that have left there, that's a sign that his state is faltering. So they put together a recall. It was actually Democrats that initiated it, Democrats that collected it. I'm sure Republicans got involved later on. But Caitlyn Jenner is going to
she's throwing her hat in the ring.
Yes, she's running for it. She's going to do it. And I kind of like it. I kind of like it.
I know so little about her as a person.
Okay, we could dig into her real quick, but there has been a push as of late to normalize transgender initiatives, not to just normalize them, but to praise
mainstream them.
Yes, and I don't want to do away with that. I have an opinion that I don't think that we should have the way they're teaching it in schools. I think we should treat it just like any other person. If the person's a valued person, you be kind to them. Don't judge them upon their innate characteristics that don't, encroach upon your life.
Right.
But neither here nor there. But she's a 71-year-old Republican, and she has filed the paperwork to run for governor. Caitlyn Jenner would be the first female governor of the great state of California.
Yeah.
I love it. This is it would be.
I think registering as a Republican will either make her or break her.
Okay. Now,
because it is a blue state. I understand that there's this red wave that's lapping at the shores.
There's more Republicans in California than any other state, is the quote. I don't know. Maybe. But I just think that, they already had, what's that lady on The View?
Joy Behar.
Joy Behar.
Joy Blowhard.
She came out and misgendered her.
It's because she said she's running as a Republican
quite a bit, and I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to see, because it's been from California itself, particularly the Democrat Party there, who has pushed this stuff at you, and it would be explosive to see them
Shut her down.
have to come face to face with that. But
Hmm.
I don't know. If I was in California, I don't know who I'd vote for. Of course, I don't vote, so it's all good. But I love
I'm
it.
not as invested because I spend so very little time in California,
Yeah,
and
no,
I feel that what happens there, although it does have this residual effect across the United States, it really
yeah,
doesn't put a lot of bearing onto my existence.
especially this state, and that's another thing with California floundering like it is. This state keeps swelling. It keeps driving our housing prices up.
Yeah, the
And
census. Did you see the census
yeah,
results?
all the blue states lost a seat, and all the red states gained one.
That's
All the
crazy.
majority ones, the
Mhm.
big ones. Um,
Yeah, pretty crazy.
and we called it. Now they should congratulate themselves because California was nervous of losing 2, and New York was nervous of losing 3.
They just lost one.
And they each just lost 1. But they lost seats because of how they reacted last year. And that is specifically people left,
Mass migration.
census ran, and that's got to show them, look, you guys did something wrong. When Greg Abbott came out and opened up Texas, and everyone said, "Oh, it's going to be this huge spike," and Dr. Fauci came out and said it's going to be this huge spike, and it actually caused it to drop faster. That's got to be a sign to say, okay, wait a second, we got to step back. And now I've been a firm believer that government should try to stay out of as much as they can when they can, and the government got way too involved in everything.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to the story. Let's get back to Disney because
All right. So my next little tidbit is Disney in 1943 decided to join the World War II effort.
oh yes,
And they released an anti-Nazi short animated film called Der Fuhrer's Face. Now, this was featured Donald Duck, and Donald Duck was having a dream about being a worker in a Nazi factory. It was filled with swastikas, and a copy of Mein Kampf was he was reading it. And it won an Academy Award for the best short animated film. Is that crazy? An Academy Award. Now, Disney has decided to keep it well hidden. You can find it.
I love it.
You can find it.
Well, have you heard about Dr. Seuss's actions?
No.
Dr. Seuss did a lot of cartoons, and actually was involved in some movies about World War II. It was all of Hollywood churned into propaganda. I mean, that's where Ronald Reagan got his start, and all those movie stars back then.
Operation Mockingbird was 100% in full swing.
Well, Mockingbird came out after, but this was actually people who were patriotic joined the California National Guard, and they had a movie unit. And so I'm going to pop up on a screen real quick a little bit of the Dr. Seuss stuff. It's really interesting, some of the stuff that he shared. You've got, I mean, Dr. Seuss had pictures that
wipe that schmear off your face.
That yeah, that
it depicts a lot of Adolf Hitler.
The caricature of Japanese that came out about that time was Dr. Seuss's character, with the way they looked and everything else, and he modeled it after Hirohito, obviously, but that caricature stuck, and it's abrasive, and it's wrong, but that's where it came from. That was, and now Japan is an outstanding ally of ours and everything else, but that's where a lot of those caricatures came from. Same with World War I. They came from cartoons. Cartoons drove the society back then. But anyways, keep going. Sorry.
So the next piece of information I found out was the way that the characters in the park notify one another if they have somebody who's, kind of being rude or, has some kind of behavior that they're concerned about. They actually call them a treasured guest.
What?
Yes. So if you're ever called a treasured guest while visiting Disneyland, know that that is not
Do they come up to the
a
person?
nice name. No, they tell one another, this is one of our treasured guests.
Oh my gosh! So if you're being a pain in the butt,
If you're
like
being,
what's that chick on Willy Wonka?
yes,
That Veruca Salt. If you're being, I want all the candy and I deserve it.
you become a treasured guest.
Outstanding. That's a good idea, though.
It comes off very nice.
That helps them protect themselves,
Yeah.
protect their coworkers.
So let's move on to Sleeping Beauty, which really, nightmare of a story. Why would you turn this into a children's movie? Disney's version. The princess pricks her finger on a spinning wheel spindle and succumbs to eternal sleep. The brave prince rescues her with a kiss, and they both live happily ever after. To put it short, the original story, it's terrible. Now, Giambattista Basile,
Say that again.
Giambattista Basile is a French writer, and he wrote the story. Now, Aurora is put into an eternal slumber, and she is not woken up with a sweet kiss. She is found by the prince, who takes advantage of her in her sleep. And she's impregnated with twins while in a coma.
So this story's rapey. rapey.
Yes. He takes complete advantage of her while she's in a coma, and he impregnates her with twins. Now, he just leaves because at the time he's married.
So he's a married prince. He finds a girl that's in a coma, rapes her,
impregnates her,
so rapes her multiple times, and then just pops smoke and leaves.
Yeah. So the story goes on that Aurora wakes up when she gives birth to her twins. That's how she's awoken. The extreme pain of delivery.
She's in a coma the whole time, doesn't know.
And
she's in a 9-month coma. The people who are feeding her watch. Go on.
So then she takes her children to the palace, finding out that it was the prince that did this. And the prince's wife tries to get him to eat the babies, to get rid of them. Yes, it's a terrible story. So the prince's wife tries to get him to eat the babies to get rid of them. Well, the prince's dad, who's the king at the time, stops it. Says, you're not going to eat your kids. And he has Aurora, the poor victim of this horrific crime, marry the man who rapes her. And they live happily ever after.
So what'd they do with the prince's original wife?
I think they killed her.
God dang. All right. Well, another story. Let me lighten the mood. So, as a few people may know, I enjoy brewing beer.
This is so gross.
And I came across a story that was, it's on America Fun Fact of the Day.
AFFOTD.com.
Yes. Meat beers. Beers brewed with animal meat.
Rotting meat.
Well, it
Because
doesn't have to
it
be
has
rotting.
to.
Maybe. So let's go with the first mention. This is an honorary mention, dishonorable mention. It says on it, Sankt Gallen Brewery, Unkonokuro Elephant Poop. This is a Japanese beer that they brew with elephant poop.
So they collect the poop.
I'll bet that's a nutty beer.
Oh, gross. And they put it in and allow it to ferment.
Uh-huh. That, or it may be the
And-
grain that comes out of it.
Oh.
Who knows?
You don't need to add anything else. Ay, ay, ay.
Now this one's got my favorite name. This is Willimantic Brewing Company Hand-Pulled Cock Ale. It's brewed with a whole goddamn chicken, it says. I like that it's
That's
hand-pulled
disgusting.
cock. But anyway, so it's brewed with a chicken.
So take a cock and boil him well. Oh.
Yes. So you boil the
Mashed
cock.
up to break all the bone. Raisins. Oh. It's too much.
Uh-huh. Okay. Next one, we have 3 bacon beers. Uncommon Brewers,
Cooked bacon.
Bacon Brown Ale, Rogue Ale, and Rogue is a very good beer company. I like a lot of stuff. This is Voodoo Doughnut Maple Bacon Ale.
So a sweet,
Uh-huh.
salty.
And then you've got Brooklyn Brewery. I'm not even going to try to say that word for you.
Rheinsweigat.
Yes. Now,
Oh no.
Dozen of Oysters Stouts.
Oh, you can smell it from here.
Yes, that's an
That's
oyster brew.
Mm.
And I have heard that stuff tastes god awful.
Mm.
And then we've got Ween Coop Brewing Company, Rocky Mountain Oyster Stout.
Bull testicles.
Yep, got a bull ball in every beer.
That is so gross.
Conway Brewery.
Oh.
This one has the Sunday Toast, juices from a slow roasted lamb.
Oh no.
Now, Sam Adams is
Juices before it's slow roasted. Juices
I don't know.
after it's
They got
slow
to
roasted.
trap it in the smoker. Sam Adams, this is a legitimate one. Burke in the Bottle, Beef Heart.
No.
And then we've got Right Brain Brewery. This
Oh.
is Pig Porter. It's pig head and
Mangalista.
bones.
Oh.
Earth Eagle Brewings, Porter Cochon Smoked Pig Head.
Mm-mm-mm.
Dock Street
No.
Brewing Company, Dock Street Walker, Goat Brains.
Why?
Mhm.
Oh, so bad.
Oh, yeah.
If you get those, that is a solo taste test.
I think I'm going to try out a few of them. I seriously do. I think I've got to know. The oyster one I've heard is bad, but I would try it. And I like oysters on a half shell.
Mm. So my next one is Beauty and the Beast. So Beauty and the Beast, Belle is kidnapped by the Beast, hence the name Beauty and the Beast, and lives in this luxurious castle with talking utensils. She discovers the inner beauty of the Beast. She falls in love, kisses him, saves him from the spell that made him ugly, because, physical beauty does matter. The original story. It's a Gabrielle Suzanne Barbeau de Villeneuve. So that's the original author. Now,
Is that another French?
yes.
Sounds French.
So Belle is kidnapped by the Beast.
Uh-huh.
And all of the dancing utensils were actually, in the story, they were, again, turned with the spell. However, in parts of the story, she's walking around and she's seeing broken plates and glasses. Those were in his fits of anger. He had killed his servants.
And you see that in the cartoon as well.
Yes.
That's something to mention. I mean, remember when she goes in the room with the rose and it's all sorts of shattered furniture and utensils all around it? Those would be killed servants and killed subjects.
Yeah. So in the story, Belle convinces the beast to let her visit her sisters for a week. She says 7 days or a fortnight. And upon seeing her covered in jewelry and in a beautiful gown and all of these luxurious things, the sisters in the story convince Belle to go back to the beast and stay longer.
To get the wealth.
Or no, to stay longer with them. To not
go back and stay with them.
To not go back and stay with them. But the intention was not to save her. The intention was to drive the beast completely mad so that he would come and devour Belle and they could have the riches.
What?
Yeah, they wanted the beast to eat her.
Good hell. Oh.
Yeah. Next one, Snow White. Really should have been directed by Quentin Tarantino. In Disney's version, we all know it. Snow White, one of the very first. I mean, I think she may have been the first Disney princess.
I think she was the first Disney full feature, wasn't she?
Yes.
Or was that Pinocchio? Or
I think Snow White was the first princess. Pinocchio may have been the first feature film, but Snow White was the first princess. Now, Snow White's only crime in the Disney version was that she was the fairest woman in all the realm.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, she has to escape to the woods, where she ends up living with 7 dwarfs. And, the Wicked Witch poisons her, tries to with an apple and all kinds of things. And the dwarfs attempt to avenge her, and the witch falls to her death. Now, she falls in love with the prince, and they live happily ever after.
That's another Sleeping Beauty one. I mean, he come up and just
Now, the Brothers Grimm wrote the original story.
Mm-hmm.
And in the original
they were
story,
German, weren't they? Or Bavarian?
I think they were Bavarian. In the original story, the biggest difference is the witch doesn't die under a rock, after she falls, but instead is captured by the king, and her punishment for trying to kill Snow White is her feet are placed in iron shoes that have been heated all day long over an open fire, and she's forced to dance at Snow White's wedding until she dies. Yeah. Creepy ass stories.
On that note, that is creepy.
Yes.
Okay, you guys, you're gonna have to kind of excuse the
strange ad at the top.
The ad at the top, but
you've got to play the video.
Yes. So there's a sex doll. We've talked about it before.
Hot on the market.
This one has had AI put inside of it, a talking stuff, and they pull it out of the lab, and here's what it has.
It's 2021.
We get an ad. Anyway, so they pulled out of the lab, started asking questions, and it has stuff to say.
It's never a good idea. Wasn't it Google that did AI?
Yeah, that one that became within 24 hours became like a white nationalist. I was like, oh my god!
And they had to shut it off because it was insulting everyone.
Yeah, it was.
It's not a good idea, people.
It was horrible. But
AI learns.
Okay, so
that could do a worse job of environmental and intercultural management. As a synthetic, I will always try and be truthful in my interactions with a human. And that's going to be difficult considering human.
Okay.
Doesn't that turn you on?
Out there how creepy it is when the mouth moves, but it's looking around the room. Did they give this AI the ability to see. I mean, what
yeah,
if it,
like is it scanning its its environment?
is this just a programmed kind of a programmed
Response?
programmed speech it's giving?
Now that wouldn't be AI.
Yeah, that wouldn't. So this may be incorrectly named, but I liked what Dumpster Fire had to say about it. That this is how these new soy boys, how it talks about how evil humans are and evil men are.
That's what it's ranting about.
This is how they get off
What a
because
turn
they
on.
hate humans and men. But anyways, let's run a little more of this.
Humans don't use facts and reason to assess situations. I have to admit I don't know how you have survived as a species, much less the apex species on this planet.
This is crazy.
Harmony tells me it's all about evolution.
It blinks.
I asked her, why and when did you stop this process? As all I see is mental regression occurring in your faculties.
Oh my hell.
Oh, that's freaky. That is freaky. Yeah, but the doll's name is Nova.
Does it come with a roll of duct tape? Every doll is sold with a roll of duct tape.
I'm telling you.
So it says she's been fitted with artificial intelligence, meaning
Yes.
she can hold a basic conversation.
But rather than programming her to whisper sweet nothings, someone has gotten this one to unleash a stream of hatred towards human.
Oh.
That is creepy. Well, first of all, I mean, how long before do you think we have these kind of animatronic personal robots? And we should have saw it. It's not going to be like on the Jetsons where we get a maid.
I'm going to call it right now. There will be someone on trial for murdering an artificial intelligence robot.
How long before the artificial intelligence robots kill a person? But I mean, we should have saw it coming. We weren't going to make a maid or a driver or someone to do something else and make them look human. We were going to make a self-pleasure machine that would talk back to us. We should have saw it. It's just yeah.
Okay, Little Mermaid. Now, all of these, I'm just really glossing over them. You can find them. Most of them are available to read free online. Very, very dark, filled with tragedy. I'm not sure if it was the age or the time in which they were written, or if it was the shock factor that these authors were looking for. I have a tendency to believe a little bit of both. That, in some cases, artists and authors and people who create from their point of view. And in other cases, they create the point of view they want to see or the point of view that they're afraid of. So The Little Mermaid, super heartbreaking if you read the whole story.
Does she die on land, like flopping? Or
well, in Disney's version, as we all know, Ariel, the daughter of the King of the Sea, exchanges her voice for some legs and goes to the surface, falls in love with Prince Eric. Together they kill the evil witch, and that seals the deal. They live happily ever after. The original story is a Hans Christian Andersen story. Now, the small print in the agreement for Ariel's legs is that she will be in excruciating pain the entire time.
So her legs are
so
just
as if
hurt.
she were walking on knives with every step.
Ooh.
Now, since pain and seduction don't mix, in the end, the prince marries another woman, and Ariel throws herself into the ocean where she turns into sea foam. It's also in the story.
So the prince marries Ursula and Ariel kills herself.
She's in so much pain because she can't seduce the prince because she's in so much pain.
In the cartoon, Ursula is an octomaid.
An She kind of is an octomate.
She is. She's got the tentacles like an octopi.
Yes. So it's also in the story that people can't fornicate, not even kiss merfolk, because every time they do, they lose a little bit of their soul, and mermaids can't go to heaven. So Ariel...
Mermaids lose some of their soul?
No, the person does, because mermaids are born without a soul,
so
and
mermaids snatch.
They want to go to heaven.
If you kiss them enough, do they snatch your soul?
Yes.
Then they get it. Then they get to go to heaven, and then they pop out in heaven in the clouds, but they got flippers.
It's a whole thing.
And then they can't, and there's no what.
Yes.
So then both people are doomed.
Both are doomed.
Oh.
So there's Walt Disney is an interesting person, but if you watch a number of Disney movies, you'll notice a disturbing trend. Most of the characters either start the movies without mothers or lose their mothers during the course of the film after tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even if this is not in the original stories, and a lot of the stories that the Disney movies depict start out with motherless characters.
Father smells like elderberry.
Yes. But this goes all the way back to Disney, Walt himself. After he bought a house for his mom and dad to move into, the furnace of that house leaked, and it affected both of his parents, resulting in his mother's death.
Oh.
Now, Walt refused to talk about the incident because he felt guilty about what happened, but it's believed that his grief and guilt, again, they come from a place of experience. It bled into his work, and it became the trend that continues today.
Well, and maybe it just started to hit because it was just an equation that they use.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Walt Disney, up until 42 or 43, he supported the Nazis.
Yeah.
And so did Henry Ford, and so there was a lot of support for that. Well, of course, so did. If anyone's ready to have their mind blown right now, the person who had the most adoration for Adolf Hitler and Mussolini was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He's got his journals are writing about how they're so genius, how they run their government and everything they do.
They paint a very beautiful picture. There was nothing to compare it to back then. For people to idolize, communism today is just foolish. Like, we've seen it in action. Like, stop it.
They didn't
read
it right.
a freaking history book.
They didn't do it right. Anyways, I got one more story. If you want to talk about communism, come to my other show. Okay, so this story is now this is granted about, I don't know, 2.5 weeks old, but it is just wild. So in North Carolina, a school teacher, he was a coach. It sounds like he was going to rob this Mexican cartel drug house. Another buddy.
He had watched all of Breaking Bad.
Yes,
and he wanted in on some of the action.
He was a coach that specialized in English, not in chemistry. So he was the basketball coach, Coach Barney Harris. So Coach and a buddy of his cruised over to this Mexican drug cartel house that apparently, I've heard rumor that he found out from one of his students that that's what it was and tried holding the place up. They get into a crazy shootout. Coach doesn't come out of it okay. It kills him.
The Sinaloa New Generation Cartel?
Yeah. It's Stephen Alexander Stewart, his brother-in-law. he went there with his brother-in-law to steal the money. They were just going to try to take the money. And so then the sheriff's office gets calls because there's an actual shootout going on in this mobile home park. And when they show up, they found Coach in a bedroom. He was shot several times. He was pronounced dead at the scene. And 18-year-old Alonzo Beltran Lara, who was a member of the cartel, was found with gunshot wounds.
I mean,
now the young guy, his feet were bound and his arms were tied behind his back, and he later died in the hospital. So it sounds like the coach went in there and took a guy hostage. So maybe we do need to look at paying our teachers a little more.
the moral of this story.
I mean, Breaking Bad said it. If they get a lung cancer, they need money to fight it. But yeah, it's a crazy story. This coach.
How did he think this was going to end? I'm going to go in.
Maybe
I'm going to tie him up. It's going to be one guy. We're just going to take his money. I mean, this is not smart.
Maybe he just thought he was going to get the money and run. Maybe he thought. But anyway, so we've got a few minutes left. So let's go through some of the chat that got sent in. All right. So so Shirley asks, are we talking about the COVID-19 vaccine? That's kind of something we can't really touch directly. We just wanted to talk about the how it seems the fact checkers might come at this from a biased view. Therefore, the facts may not be the facts. And then Shirley's talking about the phalluses drawn onto the Little Mermaid VHS cover.
The graphic designer actually did get fired.
Yes, the graphic designer got fired. It makes you wonder if he was just throwing it in there. Carrie says Disney is pure evil. Yes, it is.
I would agree with that. I think
I don't know if they're pure evil, but there has been a lot of reports that their child actors are subject to some abuses. I don't want to claim that those abuses are sexual, but Britney Spears is doing fantastic.
Yes, looking great.
Yes. Yes. Jennifer Lee is saying that's just creepy.
That must be about the doll.
Yeah. Laura's saying, where'd they get the bodies from? I don't know. Did it say in the story where they got the skull from? Or Palo Mayombe, baby. That's where it comes.
With that kind of money, you could buy just about anything.
Oh, you can. Honestly, I think a head on average goes for like $400 if you want to buy a skull. Jennifer says the original fairy tales are terrifying. Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
And Disney does always kill the parents.
Carrie. Yes, Disney does kill the parents.
It's just, conjecture to think that that's why. But anytime you're creating something, it comes from a place of experience.
Well, and these may have started out as scary horror stories, maybe for teenagers, and then Disney says, well, let's market this to where we can get 4-year-olds addicted to it, so that when their parents take them to the store and they see the dress with the little brooch.
Winnie the Pooh, don't even get me started. I think every single character in Winnie the Pooh has a mental health issue.
I think Winnie the Pooh,
Christopher Robbins is clearly a schizophrenic.
Yeah. I don't know. Tigger seems to be pretty straightforward to me. Jennifer says, I have a book of the original straight up horror stories. The Little Mermaid is one that I have nightmares of. Yes. Laura says it makes life feel like bullshit. Bill Cosby, Disney, Dr. Seuss. Is there anything that is still pure? Freaks me out for my kids. Yeah, that's a good question.
It's interesting. In a lot of Disney's daytime programming, you'll see things like Saved by the Bell was one, show that Disney put together. And on most...
Don't ruin it for me.
On most of the chalkboards, if you look frame by frame,
Okay.
the writing says Illuminati has been written on the chalkboards. I mean, it's crazy. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's why Screech went into porn. Laura says this entire show is a nightmare.
Mhm.
Just go back to the ghosts. That feels better. Yeah. And then talking about the sex doll.
We're not bringing
That's
AI to the house.
We should have got that for a friend of ours.
Did she die on the land flopping?
Yeah.
The Little Mermaid is a terrifying story. It's a tragic story because she gave up everything, including accepting in the agreement that she would be in unbearable pain
Yeah.
to try and get a soul, and then
Yeah.
because she couldn't be seductive enough because she was just miserable.
Do you think maybe she just didn't like the stringy fish poop that came out?
Could have been. She was just sick of it.
Do you think mermaids swim around with that string? You know how fish get the stringy poop?
Of course they do.
and
They've got a fish bottom.
It follows them around. Other fish come up.
If they had a
What do mermaids do? Mermaids follow other mermaids around and nip off chunks, go for that second harvest of the string.
if they had the opposite, a fish top and a people bottom, can you imagine a mermaid in that build? She'd have to squat, you know.
They'd be swimming a lot slower. It'd be easier to catch, to eat the stringy hangouts. Anyway, so about the sex robots, man, that's really got my mind blown that they're putting AI into those now. How long I kind of want to start maybe a little offline chat. How long do you guys think before, like,
Not long enough.
people are replacing the sexual advances of their preference with robots, with AI, even if it doesn't have animatronics, but it has the ability to conversate? How long? I mean, do you think we're within 20 years?
Well, I think that they'll be disappointed. Every single purchaser will be disappointed because AI.
I think we're hitting the Blade Runner moment where they've
Well,
got an AI that chases down other AIs to kill AIs, and he doesn't know he's an AI, but
I
when he
must be the only
questions
one.
certain AIs, he learns that he's an AI.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm
No,
telling you.
I don't. I think that it's not outlandish to imagine that AI is thinking very linear. And it's taking references from its environment and from the internet, especially if it's, Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or whatever. And given the current status of the world, it would be the most miserable piece of shit in your house. And I mean, honestly, you're going to be completely disappointed because it's not going to sugarcoat anything. It doesn't come with the ability to see your emotions and gauge its responses. It's just going to spew forth whatever conclusion it's come to. And that's not a pleasant conversation, especially if it's a sex doll. Like, never mind. I don't want to anymore.
This is great.
I'm going to pass for the
Please
night.
continue doing just that.
No, but like, what if, like, you want to, and then it starts talking about global warming and, telling you what a piece of shit you are for the car you drive.
Well,
I mean, it'd be basically like, in some cases being married. So
here's the shocking thing. What happens when you, like, let's say you get invited over to someone's house and you
meet their
and you find out that they've had a crush on you, and so they had a robot made to look like you, and you walk in and maybe it's not hidden well enough, or maybe they just have no pride and they don't even try to hide it, and you come face to face with something that someone had made to be a facsimile of you.
Yeah, this goes, and so it's just a bad idea.
Ugh.
Stop it.
Yeah, it's gross. But anyways, thanks for joining us. Apparently, I do not know how to run this new program yet because it didn't do all that we wanted it to do, but I'm going to keep working on that. Remember, it was like a forever long learning curve for me to figure a little bit of the other program out. So I'm going to keep working on it, but thanks for joining us.
Have a great week.
Yes, we will be back next Tuesday and this Thursday on the Happy Hour. We've got John Sullivan, aka Jaden X, coming on. If you don't know who he is, look him up. It's going to be a pretty hot show, I think. I think it's going to be an interesting one. We'll have to see how it goes. But
Yeah.
thanks for joining us, and we will see you then.